Yeah, welcome to this podcast. I have with me Sanjukta Basu. She is joining us from Toronto, and she did her bachelor's in economics from Hansaraj College, and then she went on to get her master's from Gokhale Institute of Politics and Economics in Pune. And then she joined the Center for Civil Society, a think tank based in Delhi, where she was working as research associate for a period of 1 year. After that, she joined National Institute of Public Finance and Policy and worked as a consultant for around a year. After that, she went on to get her master's and a PhD in economics from Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. And she is applied microeconomist, and her area of research broadly covers health economics and household decision making. Yeah, welcome to this podcast, Sanjukta.
Hi Manar, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good actually. Just you know, hoping that the cold will be over here, soon. But thanks for joining us from Toronto. How is it there? It
Mm.
will be very bad, right?
It is colder here. I think it's around minus 4 degrees Celsius.
Okay, we are
But
suffering here at 3-4 degrees.
yeah, but we don't feel I mean, if as long as you're indoor, it doesn't bother you so much.
Yeah. Yes,
But
understand. Okay.
yep, so that's all about the weather, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, so Sanjukta, the subject of discussion is, your paper, which was a part of your PhD dissertation that you did at Tulane University. And
Mm-hmm.
it is titled Effect of Parental Employment Status on Child Care.
Yeah.
Now, um, so this is, linked with the business cycle, right?
Yes.
Where, you know, there is already, some research out there where, fluctuations in business cycle produce some sort of, fluctuations in socio-economic conditions, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So there is
Right.
already some literature. One of the earliest paper that I came across was
Mm.
published in the year 1922, and it was published in the Journal of American Statistical Association, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these things are very, primitive in terms of, people trying to think as to, what sort of implications, rise in unemployment, has on,
Right.
the socio-economic and also the household, condition.
Mm-hmm.
So given that, Sanjukta, could you, give some sort of a brief analysis as to what your paper was about?
Okay. So let me start from what was like what I defined as business cycle and
Yes.
what do I define as childcare. So for
Okay.
me, business cycle, so like the business cycle trend that we see, those up and down curves of a recession and the booms. And I
Yes.
try to capture them using looking at the national level of unemployment rate or state level of unemployment rate.
Mm-hmm.
Let me mind you that this paper was entirely based on US household data.
Yes.
So unemployment rate is a very good indicator of looking at how the business cycle is. If its unemployment rates are low right now, that means that we are at a boom stage of the business cycle, and if it's high, then we call it a recession stage of the business cycle.
Okay.
Look, so I and for me, child, so I'm connecting that. Like for instance, a boom in business cycle would mean lower unemployment rates. That is, an individual is less likely
Absolutely.
to be
Yes.
unemployed,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So in that case, how those factors have an impact on childcare or in the of the when I say childcare, it's like a very broad topic. It's not only just ensuring that the child is fed and sent to school, but also spending time with the children to ensure that there is a holistic development of the child.
Yes.
And the word childcare in detail has been discussed a lot, not only by economists, by educationists, like anthropologist, psychologist, and so on. Like this is a huge literature on what do you mean by childcare, how
Yes.
it's defined, and all. So what I try to do is look at childcare and break it down into two things two important things that the parent can contribute on. Like those two big buckets that the parents contribute on.
Okay.
It's money and it's income. And the idea comes from Becker himself.
Uh,
He has this really famous line saying the children are self-produced goods produced by income and time.
yeah, this comes
He
from his
says that.
paper, right?
He's come from one of his
Published
papers. It's a chapter
1988.
on a book called A Treatise on the Family. The chapter is titled The Demand for Children. It's actually a very interesting read.
Okay.
Yeah, and the book itself is very interesting. It picks up very unusual topics that people will not connect with economics, but he does. And he does it very well.
Okay.
So using that idea, like
Yeah.
if you're saying children are self-produced goods and you need to put in income and time to produce them.
Uh-huh.
So if when there's a bust in the business cycle and people have lost their jobs, so there are a set of unemployed people.
Uh-huh.
So now they can put in more time with it because they can substitute the time which was earlier spent at work on
Yes.
children, right?
Yes.
I won't say just children, but that could be one of the places that you spend your time on. So
Yes.
my paper was trying to capture that phenomena, how a loss in employment,
Uh-huh.
which can be a larger indication of a recession or a slowdown in the economy. How
Uh-huh.
does that translates to child care in terms of the time that people spend on it?
Yes.
So I hope over the course of this discussion, I can elaborate a lot in detail of how do I make this connection and why time I feel is important.
Yes. Yes. So, why this is important is because, we have so there are actually two important, macro concepts, linked with each
Mhm.
other. So one is the Franco Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis, right?
Right.
And the other is, the human capital approach, which was obviously, as you mentioned, pioneered by, Gary
Yeah.
Becker.
Backup.
Yeah. And now when we talk about human capital, uh, a substantial part of human capital development happens at the formative stage for an individual, which is, when the kid is actually, growing up, right?
Yes, that's the literature which says that, not just substantial, a lot, it's a lot of the time and time factor goes during the early stages of development or early stages of growth. And I was able to capture those years. So my data looked at only parents who have children up till the age of 30, which is an age where more attention is being paid on the kids. There's on a regular basis, you need to interact with the child, not only for, teaching them social responsibility or something. It's just to ensure that the child gets on with their day. Like a child less than 13 needs attention in terms of, prepare the food for them, wake them, get them to school and all.
Okay.
So 13 onwards, they're in their preteens. And I'm not saying like, okay, 13 is the age, like once they turn 13, they're all independent and not. But the data was able to give me information about those parents which have kids less than 13 and the parents who have kids above 13. So at pre-adult stage or a teenager stage,
Yeah.
kids tend to become their own individual people and they don't need the same amount of attention from their parents as they need as when they're younger. So for a parent's time frame, I
Yeah.
mean the amount of time it needs to give to their child, it kind of falls down for a lot of reasons. And that may not completely be a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, again, this is the entire literature on the education or on the education sector, on the children behavior, children development. So
Yes.
since there's a so my I was kind of not focused too much on what's the after impact, a lot of because there was a limitation to how much I can dive deep into
Uh-huh.
and all that. So if you ask me what my paper briefly tried to do was look at how unemployment, and when I say unemployment, I am looking at short-term unemployment. I am looking
Yeah.
at those individuals who have recently been unemployed.
Yeah.
When I say recently, I'm using the word to associate with those unemployed for like 1 to 6 months or 3 to 6 months. So after 6 months, I am not able to follow these people. So I don't know what happens to them. But Based on the information that they have provided, I can say that they have been unemployed for 1 month or 6 months, depending on how they have answered their questions on the survey. So
Okay.
this I consider as a short
Sangeeta,
term. Hmm.
we will, get more to the data part in the latter, half of the
Yeah.
discussion. But just that, do you have any sort of distribution as to what was the median unemployment? Was it 3 months, 2 months, or 6 months? Like most of these individuals were unemployed for.
So I could not have data to say were they unemployed after, did they get a job after those 6 months that they're unemployed.
Okay.
So that's why I was going to the data. So the data that I used was American Time Use Survey, and they asked a question on have you been unemployed, and almost the same set of people are interviewed twice a year, and that's part of one survey.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they have a similar question for the unemployment part.
But you don't know the
So
the other responses of the individual, right?
the other responses, so I don't know that after they were already or they have already responded to the last set of questions for that year's survey. I have
Okay.
no way of following them up later on.
Okay. Okay. Why? Okay.
Yeah,
That was not part
because
of your objective of the
that
paper.
was no, that was not part
Hmm.
of the objective, and I didn't
Hmm.
have the data to check that, because that was actually a very interesting question which came up. That, see, we are always associate unemployment with bad things.
Yes.
Chronic
Yes.
unemployment leads to social
I mean,
degradation of the
yeah.
family.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
uh, Even there are enough studies I mean, I can quote studies where saying that kids who are kids of unemployed parents end up earning almost 11% or 12% less than their counterparts. They
Okay.
have more psychological issues. They may
Yes.
even have social behavioral issues.
Yes. Yes.
um, so these are already there, but these are associated with chronic, like they always use the word chronic unemployment, chronic
Yes.
long-term employment. And there's some very beautiful studies, factory closing and what happens to all those workers after 10
Yes.
years,
Yes. Yes.
stuff like that. But what got interesting was when you look at those who are unemployed for a short time and they expect to be unemployed for a short.
Yes, and we
They're
have
not.
feelings, right, which is coming from the life cycle hypothesis, right?
Yeah. So
Consumption is
like,
smooth. Yes.
right. So let's think about Modigliani's life cycle hypothesis. I mean, as a first time economist, when I got introduced to that topic in
Macro and
undergrad, I
macro.
found that in
Yeah.
undergrad macro, I found it very interesting.
Yeah.
That a curve kind of always stuck to my head, and I think I just really understood what's happening there. So I spent time on trying to understand that idea. So
Yes.
this guy is saying that our consumptions are mostly smooth. So in period, we have a two-period model in Modigliani. So in first period, we do not consume and we do not earn anything, so we borrow. And next period, we earn enough so that we are able to pay back
Yes.
with the interest, and at the same time have enough money to meet the consumptions, and we're keeping our consumptions the same.
Exactly.
So if we think, so let's think on the other opposite side of that. Like your period one is when you are earning income and you have a certain set of consumptions.
Yes.
You were spending on yourself. Like you have a Netflix account. You have a gym membership that's on yourself. Then you
Yes.
have your kids who are going to private schools. They
Yes.
have private tutors.
Yes.
They may take piano lessons. These are already there. And then come Friday night, you for some reason you lose your jobs.
Yes.
And I'm saying, and on Monday morning you don't have a job, whatever be the reason. Maybe you chose to leave that position to move to another position, you were fired, or you took a voluntary retirement so you can do something else, whatever be the
Yes.
reason. But Monday morning you don't have a job. And I'm looking at people who are expecting themselves to be in the labor market. These
Yes.
are not people who are who are retiring for the heck of retiring and ending their working period. No.
Yeah.
Then those people are ready, right? I know I won't have a job on Monday, but I have all these savings that I need to work on.
Yes.
So if you focus on those who are in the labor force and they're hoping to work for the
Yes.
next, at least for the foreseeable future, those guys on Monday, when they know they're not going to get a paycheck at the end of the week or at the end of the month, will they stop their Netflix account just like that, or stop the gym membership? Maybe gym membership can stop. Like, fine, I'll just go for a run.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they won't pull their kids out from the private school that they were sending them for the past year or so.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. They won't stop the piano tutor from coming and teaching them piano. They won't just not do that from Monday.
Yeah.
It can happen eventually, when money crunch happens, but the money crunch is not there on the first Monday.
Yes.
So that's what I'm trying to focus the audience on, that short, that unemployed on that Monday, your consumption behavior has not changed, even if your
Yes.
income source has.
Yes.
So I'm still spending that much. So now let's go back. So this is how the Modigliani's idea kind of puts in place, that my consumption is still smooth and I'm using my savings or I'm borrowing to ensure
Yes.
that I'm spending, if not exactly the same amount, almost the same amount. Like on the essentials, which I considered essential, I'll be keep spending on that.
Yes.
Right. So that's how your consumption expenses keeps constant, no matter if you have a job or not. And that's again in the short run, the first Monday or the first month or the first 2 months, you're doing
Uh-huh.
this. You have your savings you can work on. Now, if Becker keeps saying that you need time and income are two important ingredients for producing kids. He
Yes.
says that repeatedly in his studies. Now,
Yeah, because
so
both of them correlate with care, right? Because care can
yes,
also be
yeah,
derived from someone spending their time. And as
right.
parents, the marginal benefit for a child is much more when the parent or the father is spending his time with the child when he's in his early formative years, as opposed to, let's say, when he's in his teens, right?
Again, that's not a literature that I have explored enough to say if it's better or worse.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay.
is it better if they are spending more time with them as babies versus when they are spending time with them as adults? So that's not something that my scope was.
But it's an interesting question.
It is interesting question, and I can assure you there is a lot of people who's doing the same work, trying to
Okay.
figure out what's happening there, because
Oh,
there is because there is a lot happening there.
okay.
There is a lot happening there in that area.
Okay.
The amount of people who have been doing research on how much time parents supposed to spend. I mean, even in India, at underprivileged communities,
Uh-huh.
there are programs being run by government, by NGOs, trying to train parents to be more aware of their kids, to spend time with them, to talk to them.
Okay.
There is, I mean, the Right to Education Act has this clause where, I mean, used to have this clause where you include parents in children's decision in school decision making. And the group, the parent teacher conference thing, they were promoting that, where parents get involved in the school decisions.
Okay.
So, I mean, school decisions means you're getting involved in your kid's life, right?
Yes.
So if if there's a government act who's pushing schools or school authorities, get parents in school, let them
Uh,
know what's happening.
uh,
So there is a clear indication that we are promoting parents' involvement, parents' time for their children.
yes.
And yeah, and the income part is definitely very obvious there. If you have a good income, you can send your kids to the best school. If your public schools are not good enough, you send them to the private schools. In India, most people with any money try to send their kids to a private school, even if it's a very cheap budget private school. But
Yes.
the idea is that private schools are better because they're taking money and they're going to do a better job. So
Yes.
parents are definitely spending some money. And so according to this study by Letelier, parents spend easily 20 to 30% of their household budget on just kids expenditure.
Okay.
So, and that varies because maybe some are in private schools, some are in public schools, some are in very expensive schools, some require extra tutors, some have extracurriculars, so on.
Yeah,
And
but
this is,
so
and
yeah.
hmm,
No, so but then what you're saying is, so like we were discussing, that there are two components
hmm,
providing benefits to the child.
right,
The income, which covers these aspects where the
right.
expenditure is involved. The other is in terms of the time, right? So getting back to those same thing in terms of time, and when there is a short-term unemployment, then the parents are more likely to spend time with their kids. So that was a chain of thought, right? You were
That,
discussing.
yeah, that was the conclusion. So the
Yeah.
chain of, actually, if I go through the what was I was thinking, I just wanted to see how people reacted when they lost their jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you have an account of that whole day, if you have
So,
every
so this
minute of,
comes from something which is called time use survey, right?
Yes, the time use survey.
So
So
if
the
you
date.
can just give 2 minutes, Sanjukta, and elaborate on this, what is a time use survey, because there will be many listeners
Okay.
who will not have a clue as to what is time use survey about. Yes.
Okay. So the time use survey. This is also administered by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the US.
Yeah.
So time use survey is a data survey which captures the whole day of an individual. Every minute or every 15 minutes accounted for, and
Okay.
try to incorporate what kind of what kind of activities that they have been using in terms of the minutes.
Okay.
Right. So this data has been collected in the US since 2005, and 2021 is the last survey.
Okay.
But this has been very popular back in Scandinavian countries. They have a much longer survey of time use,
Okay.
even Australia for that matter.
Okay.
Yeah. And this data, I find this data actually very beautiful. You compare, you can look at how the daily life of the person is divided into, how much time
Divided
they're spending,
between work and leisure.
all
Okay.
activities.
Okay.
It's like they have differentiated the activities in terms of work, childcare, leisure, and all,
Okay.
but they divide it in much, like they don't leave it in buckets like that. Their questions are: how much time is spent driving their kids to school, how much
Okay.
time is spent driving their kids, attending plays or school activities with children, how much
Okay.
time is spent um, helping your kids with the homework.
Okay.
Right. So
Okay.
these were the and to ensure
Very
that it's
micro
a
questions, huh?
very micro questions,
So
very
how
micro
are they
questions.
collecting this? I'm actually curious to know. So how?
Connecting this to what?
Do they go? I mean, I'm sure they will not be going like we have in India, going from one household door to another, right? That will not
Okay.
be. But then how is it collected? Like,
So a lot of these surveys are done on the phone, or they have a survey
okay,
book.
team.
Yeah, survey team. So I'm saying BLS is Bureau of Labor Statistics is collecting a lot of these data at the country level.
Okay.
A lot
Okay.
of these and they know this is one of their data sets. They have a data set on other aspects as well, on like in on employment data. They have on birth related information, which some of
Okay.
them goes back in the early now, like during the final time of the depression.
Okay.
So these guys are now pro. They've been doing this for a very long time.
Okay.
So yeah, for this state, for the American Time Use Survey data, what they do is that when they getting the interview recorded, they ask them their questions
Mm-hmm.
about the last 24 hours.
Okay.
So you tell us, how did you spend your last 24 hours? So in the last 24 hours, how much time did you spend having dinner? How much
Okay.
time did you go out to dinner? How much time
Okay.
did you spend going out for your dinner? How much time did you spend going out to a bar?
Okay.
And they capture people. So the amount of number of people that they capture it's a huge number, like there are millions of respondents, and they try to get these interviews not on the same day for everyone. So
Okay.
these are spread over. So that
Okay.
means there's some people interviewed on Monday, some Tuesdays, some Wednesdays, some on the weekends, and try to be as equally distributed as possible. So you get like for instance, on a Monday morning, there will be more time spent at work, right?
Okay. Okay.
More time spent commuting to work and all.
Yeah.
Friday night, people will want to go out for dinner. So you may not be able to capture the amount of time that they spend having dinners, but
Yeah.
they may be able to capture the amount of time that they go out for leisure on a Friday night.
Okay.
So if you look at the day, like if you're able to average them out, you can actually get some very beautiful numbers out of them.
Okay.
If you look at an individual's day, and if it's saying that the interview was done on a weekday, you can see how a typical weekday looks like for a average American individual.
Okay.
Right. So that's one thing. This data is actually interesting, and if it's done for India, there's a lot of implication that can happen. A lot. We can see how much time. We can see the difference in labor supplements by gender, because in Indian households are primarily very like one working member and one
Yes,
member at house. That's a very common. That's more common than an American household where both the adults are working members, or any adult end up having a job or so. In this
I
case,
think
that's
there
not
is
the.
one available already. I think it was done late 90s, and I think the second was done, I think, very recently. Time is,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
if I'm correct, because as far as I know, this is the case. Anyhow, Sanjukta, so you have actually explained time is survey. So coming back to the discussion, which we're
Mm-hmm.
going on. So you were saying that your inference in terms of the time spent with the kid, where based on the data, the time survey data, right?
Right.
Yes. So if you can, yeah, just build on that in terms of your
Yeah.
um,
So
yeah.
what I did was look at the 24 hours of time that they had reported in this survey,
Mhm.
and divided them into some broad categories. For
Okay.
instance, leisure, work related stuff, which included going to work, socializing for work,
Okay.
working on the main job, and working on second jobs, were
Okay.
hobbies which are generating incomes.
Okay.
These are all looked as work. Then you had activities for like personal activities,
Okay.
which
Okay.
included sleeping, grooming yourself,
Okay.
uh, cooking, and all household related chores.
Yeah.
Then I had looked at those who were then parental activity, like child related focus.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
so time activities which are very clearly saying that these are child related, like spending time with the kids in terms of helping them with homework,
Okay.
uh, and helping driving them to school, having dinner with them, going
Okay.
to their school plays.
Okay.
So this was seen as pair time with the children.
Okay.
Then there was time spent in job search.
Okay.
Yeah. So because one of the primary activities you would expect for those in the labor force and don't have a job is looking for a position, a new job.
And
So that comes.
this data
Huh?
was for the entire US, right?
This is for the whole US. It covers. I mean,
50 states.
the it, yeah, the sample covers 50 states.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Large data set. Okay.
It's a large data set. I mean, like I said, the Bureau of Labor Statistics have been collecting data like this for a while now, and they've been doing a very, very good job there.
Okay.
And if we can do a similar sample for India, trust me, we'll have so much of information to talk about.
Yeah.
And trying to understand why this data, I mean, because like India with its uniqueness will have so many different stories to share.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Correct.
Um, yeah. So so these are the things that I'm looking at.
Yes.
These are the times how I divided my whole time into these activities.
Yeah. This five.
Right.
Five.
Yes, these five buckets.
Okay.
Uh, so so if we talk about once a person, so you'll assume that once somebody loses a job, their primary focus would be to look for a new job, right?
Yes.
And there would be what I was looking at, like what happens when parents lost their job. So those, and since I don't have a time series, this is a repeated cross sections. I'm
Uh-huh.
comparing how households or comparing individuals who are similar
Uh-huh.
in other activities,
Uh-huh.
other factors,
Uh-huh.
and employed versus unemployed, right?
Okay. Okay.
So those guys, once they lose their jobs, or once those who are was unemployed, and will they be spending a lot more time looking for a new job, right? That 8 hour which was earlier spent at work,
Uh-huh.
maybe 4 hours out of that should be in work looking for a job. If we are
Okay.
going through that assumption, then they're frantically looking for a job, they have losing with the ideas that they want to be in the labor force and all. But
Oh,
what I find is that the amount of the time spent in job search rises by like 5%, 4%.
okay.
It's not as large as one would hope for.
Okay.
However, the time spent with the kids when really goes up. So
Okay.
then you go like, okay, this is not what you expect. This is
Okay.
interesting. If once you lose, like, so employed people will have no time spent at work, right? Zero.
Yes. Yes.
So all that 8 hours or 10 hours,
Yes.
one expect ki they'll be scared and they're like, "Nee, job job but that's not what's happening. They're not
Okay.
going for that frantically, like they're actually spending time on themselves.
On
Leisure
them.
goes up.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Leisure and because that's so those are kind of the indications which are telling me, that just because I don't have income source, my consumption spare consumption patterns are not getting disrupted. Because I found evidence of that people were still going out for dinners.
Okay.
Unemployed people who are claimed to be unemployed for like a month or so
Okay.
or 2 months, they
Okay.
are still going out for dinners, still going out
Okay.
to bars compared to
Um,
similar individuals.
Mind you, your time period covers the great financial crisis also. A period
Yes.
when the unemployment was, I think, one of the highest in US. It has been, I think, for the
Yeah.
last 50 years, right? Okay.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. The
Yes, it does. So you see this huge dip in the business cycle, how we see it, the boom just before the financial crisis, the bust there, and then trying to recover into 2012, 13 when they're coming back.
okay.
So you have all that. And a lot of people ended up getting their jobs back in after the financial crisis in the US. So like
Yes.
because in the US, the financial crisis really hit well. You had a very good boom in 2007.
Yes.
People were great, multiple sources of income, very well jobs and everything. And then you had a burst and lot of people lost their job. Thousands and thousands of jobs were lost
Yes.
in 2008.
Yeah.
And then eventually they recovered and started coming back to their boom phase.
Okay.
Yeah. So in India, on the other hand, the financial crisis were able, the government, because of its policy, were able to smooth a lot of the impact of the financial crisis. We did not hit us the way US got hit.
Okay.
Right? There were a lot of cushioning provided to banks. There were lot of these policies which kind of smoothen the direct impact of it. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. So in that would be my 2 cents on that, on the recession of how it impacted India versus US. Okay,
Okay.
so yeah, so we were talking about the different, how the consumption patterns were not changing. Yeah, so this is what we saw, that the consumption pattern was not changing as much, and the most interesting part was there was not enough time spent in looking for jobs. There was this not frantic uh behavior like I have to look for a job, like I spend 10 all my 8 hours goes to job search, to networking for job search, meeting people for job search, and the data had questions about these. So
Yeah.
I won't say I'm not making it up, they were actually having questions on these things.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so were you networking for job search, were you going out to eat for job search, were you looking at jobs in the internet? They had these questions. So when you have these questions, you're able to understand, like dive into it and see what's happening at those levels. So that's when you see that there's an increase in the time spent with the kids, and that's the most increase
Okay.
among all the other activities.
Yeah.
There's a largest increase in the time spent with children.
Okay. Yes, Sanjukta. So you are telling that the time spent with the children actually, went up, right? And this is when these parents, are actually employed in the short run, unemployed in the short run, right, Sanjukta?
Yes, that's what I saw.
Yes.
Um, that's what my main observation was. Then you start looking at why this is happening.
Yes.
Have all this literature saying that chronic unemployment has all these psychological impact on both the individual who's unemployed versus and the children. But
Okay.
here you see that these people end up spending more time with the kids. So you then look at, these are primary activities with the children. It seems that that's yes, I'm answering yes to that question also. Where
Okay.
this is so from these observations, I then I went back and like understanding more in detail of what Becker was trying to say there. All this entire theory he had on demand for children. And in his paper, he creates an entire utility function with a budget constraint to explain this idea. So if
So you are
following
by
his
his paper, you mean his paper that was published in American Economic Review, Family Economics
Ye-
and Macro Behavior, right? That paper.
yes, and as well as there is this book.
Okay.
So my book titled A Treatise on the Family.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, the
Okay.
treatise on the family, and that book looks at. I mean, if we look at chapter 5 of that book,
Okay.
it's very beautifully done about there's a budget constraint, and you try to using words which as a layman that's the first thing we are taught in microeconomics, using those concepts and using it in a larger scenario like a household.
Okay.
So in according to his idea, and I extrapolate that and try to find my own theory behind, like try to add my input on it, to say
Okay.
that if children are if you have time and income and children are produced using those two goods, individuals are also using those two goods in themselves. So parent is spending time on children, at the same
Okay.
time spending time on themselves.
Okay.
Similarly with the income, right?
Okay. Okay.
So now if they have lost their jobs now, and I'm assuming that they are not able to change their consumption pattern immediately, but they're able to change their their time behavior.
Okay.
So
Okay.
these parents end up having this extra time that they can put to their children.
Okay.
So assuming there is a simple production curve, and you have time and income of different combinations, which will produce a certain amount of childcare. If you're not changing income, but you're increasing time, you'll definitely be on a higher childcare curve, right?
Yes. Probably at a better, curve. By better, I
Yeah,
mean at an because yeah, the I mean the connotation here is that the child needs someone to look up to as he or she is growing up, right? And there is
well,
not
I'm
that.
not going to that psychology behind it. Let's just
Okay.
keep that for the child behavior specialist.
Okay.
Let's just talk in terms of the number, the economics that we understand. A
Okay.
utility curve, a production function with a budget constraint, like that.
Okay.
So if we look at an individual's utility is derived out of the time of the amount of income it spends on themselves and on childcare.
Okay.
Right. So an individual so if it has 100 rupees, it can spend on themselves and the child, and it has 24 hours in a day, it can spend on themselves and the child. So these are the different choices that the individual's making.
Okay.
Right. Let's just like try to imagine the curve and in the most simplest form ever.
Okay.
So you have parents who are spending enough time and energy on their kids.
Okay.
Parents who also wants to spend time and money on themselves. They have their own thing that they want to do.
Okay.
So childcare is a product of, or childcare is a function of the time and income spent on the children.
Yes.
An individual's utilities derive from the childcare. Given that they are producing children, they want the best for the children, so they would try to maximize childcare. That will help give them utility, and the utility that they obtain from the time spent on themselves and the income them spend on themselves.
Okay.
So looking at just the childcare, and if we are and so if I'm saying childcare is a function of these two things, and we are not changing income, we are using the same amount of money, but
Yes.
we are increasing the amount of time.
Yes.
So will that improve childcare?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I mean, I am happy spending. I am already spending $100 on my children, but now I have 4 more extra hours to give them.
Yes.
So definitely, I'm providing a higher level of childcare.
Yes.
Right. So
Yes.
if I'm providing high level of childcare, and that's in terms also giving me some utilities, that's I'm driving directly out of Becker's equation.
Yes.
That the utility function comes from the number of children that I have in terms of I'm looking at quality children and the other goods and services that I'm providing
Yes, yes.
for them, for myself. So if these, so when they're able to provide more time to the kids without hampering the amount of income, they are actually doing a better job, like they're providing a high level of childcare.
Exactly.
So that's the theory that I'm working on. That improving the amount, increasing the time spending with the kids is increasing childcare, and which I am hoping transports to the child doing better in school and then doing better in life holistically.
Yeah. So this is
So
the theoretical underpinning of
yes,
your
and
yes.
right, and I am looking at the first step of it. Loss of income, immediate effect is increase in childcare, and thankfully the data had very few years, but they also had data on mood indicators, happiness, sad, stress. So
Okay.
I dabbed a bit on that and see that our unemployed people tend to be more sad or less happy, but I
Okay.
didn't find that. But I did find that happier people tend to spend more time with the kids.
Okay. Okay.
So clearly there is a correlation
Or
there.
spending time with the kids, makes you more happy. That
It
also
could,
is
it can
possible.
go, yeah. All I can say with I can give you a correlation that happy people spending time with their kids.
Yeah.
Does spending time with their kids give them happiness, or if they're happy and that leads to spending time with their kids? I'm not even dwelling there.
Yeah.
I'm
Or
just
they're happy.
giving a nice correlation.
Or they're happy because they no longer, having to face the constant, turmoil that modern day job, requirement have, right? Wherein,
It could be anything, because
yeah,
I'm saying happy people are spending more time with kids, and losing jobs are not making people sad.
yeah,
So that could
at
be a
least in the
reason.
short term, that is that,
At least in the short term.
yeah,
Yes.
that seems more reasonable, right? But we can't say anything about the long term implication, right? Right.
We already have data giving long-term implications, that there are people who are more stressed out, there are people who are depressed, who have chronic unemployment.
Yeah, this is
But short-time unemployment is not a very bad thing. That's what I'm trying to portray here.
not a bad thing from a number of angles, right?
Yes, you are able to spend time with your children. Their leisure time has gone up.
Yeah.
Amount of time people were spending on themselves has gone up. I mean, they are going out to eat, they're going for movies, going to bars. So definitely the self-care part has also gone up.
Yeah,
So
and
that
you're recalibrating, what your future goals are, future objectives are, right?
could be,
In
but
the experience and knowledge, that one has accumulated over the years, right? So short-term unemployment in that way is not necessarily a bad thing, right?
yeah, that's something. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because I even looked at those who were anticipating an unemployment versus who were not anticipating an unemployment. For instance, those who voluntarily left their jobs.
Okay.
Right. So people who were laid off,
Yeah.
or they were not expecting the unemployment, right? They are forced to resign. They were fired. And then you look at those who are new entrants of the labor market, or re-entrants of the labor market. So they expect to be unemployed, at least for some, or seasonal workers. Let's look at seasonal workers.
Yes.
Seasonal workers, they'll spend few months working, and then few months they don't have a job. So they'll know that after the end of this month, I will not have a job for 3 months. Right? They already know this.
Exactly. So it's like, there is actually a lot of empirical literature where it is documented that the downswing in business cycle fluctuations actually impact the early entrants in the job market the worst. So they actually suffer the worst, because not let's say managers, people who are managing. So they are not as much affected as, let's say, early entrants into the job market, right? Because they are the first to lose their job. So there is this argument also.
See, that's true, but that's again, then they can start looking at each subsets. Who's more impacted by a job loss?
No, but
Are aged people better off?
Your set in this paper actually covers people who have kids. So it will be, I mean, so it will not be erroneous to assume, these people are actually at very senior positions in terms of their jobs, right? So that is why they're not impacted. So their consumption might not be impacted because they already have a lot of savings, to back their, their,
See, I'm not commenting on how much savings that they have.
okay.
All I'm saying that it's in the immediate short run,
Mhm.
people are not changing their consumption
Consumption
patterns.
patterns, okay.
That's my assumption.
Yes, yes.
They're not changing their consumption pattern a little. And what are evidence I have to prove it to look at their behavior pattern.
Okay, okay.
They're
Yes.
not looking for a job. Like there's only a 5%, 10%, 6% increase in job search time, where it should be like a 40%, 50% increase in job search time.
Okay,
Compared to then there should be a decline in leisure, or
okay,
at least decline in leisure which cost money. I
okay,
did not find that.
okay,
So these are a couple of incidences which are giving me evidence saying that no, this is not, income patterns are not getting impacted the way we want think it will.
okay,
But consumption time patterns are impacted in a way where people are not, people are still treating themselves. They are spending, and they are spending time on their leisure. They are
okay,
spending time job search. Don't get me wrong. They are spending time on job search,
okay, okay,
but
okay,
it's not as high as one would accept. That whole 8 hours to spend at work is not translated to the
got
job
got it,
to job search.
got it. So anyways, Sanjita have actually, given a very, detailed, analysis of your paper. So now just coming to the methodology part, then how did you, address, these questions? So what was the approach, that you adopted, Sanjukta?
So I used a instrumental variable estimation method
Okay,
where I used the business cycle indicator as an instrument for employment status,
okay,
and in turns to find the effect of on the time an individual tend to spend on their children on the other activities that I had listed before.
okay,
So the thinking was that the changes in business cycle affect employment, affect employees.
mhm,
So they either by gaining employment or they're getting laid off, right?
okay,
If there's a business cycle change, like on the booms at a bus site, an employee gets impacted by either they lose their jobs or they gain a job,
okay,
right?
okay,
So employment status, and now I'm saying employment status affects their time diaries, the 24 hours that they spend on doing different activities.
okay,
So when at a boom time, when employment opportunities are very lucrative, you're getting a higher salary, there is more demand in the market for labor. The opportunity cost of spending time with the children is can be seen as really large in terms of the foregone wages.
okay,
Now, hours spent with the kids
okay,
may seem like a loss in terms of if you're working that hour, you may end up making a couple of $100.
okay,
I mean, or whatever, couple of $100, or what, even if you're at the minimum wage, you like at least $20 or $30, depending on what's the your wage rate is.
okay,
So those, but when there is a downturn, there are lesser jobs. Spending time with their kids may seem more lucrative because you're not giving up a wages which were very high, or
okay,
wages at all. I mean, you don't have a job maybe.
okay, okay,
So a business cycle can influence the employment status,
okay,
and by substituting time spent at work with other activities like childcare and job search. And I use an instrumental variable method to test this.
okay,
So it was a two-stage least square, two-stage least square method, where first stage found the tried to find the connection between the unemployment rate of the state on the employment status of an individual, and then using that predicted employment status, I try to find how their time behavior changed.
okay, okay.
Yes.
So anyhow, so your methodology leads you
Hmm.
to come out with conclusion that unemployment in the short run might have some unexpected benefits, right?
Yes, so that's what my conclusion was saying, that unemployment in the short run may not be a very bad thing.
May not be a very bad thing. Okay.
Yeah, and so one of the clear, if you ask me, like, policy implication, one policy implication very clearly for this paper would be understand the importance of parents' time in the child life
Yes.
and advocate for them at a younger stage, and that could be done from the school level, from parental classes,
Okay.
uh, just so that family parents are aware of the importance of their time in the kids life. And we don't wait it for, there's a I lose my jobs and I'll have 3 months off, or I'm a seasonal worker and I'll have 3 months off and then I'll spend it with the child.
Okay.
Instead of waiting for an unexpected unemployment,
Uh,
focus on household dynamics may
yes.
not be the best method, but may if proper awareness can help these parents balance out their life,
Yes.
even when they have a lucrative job or a very demanding job. So that's one very clear indication from my paper. Another broader implication, and that's when I encourage further research, is that understand what's happening in the short run unemployment phase.
Okay.
Are people really worse off? Is unemployment always a bad thing? Because we associate unemployment as bad thing for the economy, for an individual.
Yes.
It's just there, and these ideas comes from as going back as Keynesian or even classic economists.
Yes.
You always do that, and I mean, the paper, if you look at even Gary Becker's paper, he quotes Malthusians and all, every time, even with during the Great Depression, people end up having kids because there's nothing else to do.
Yes.
So, but is that the only reason you're having children at that time? Because there's nothing else to do, because you don't have a job. Like, think about it, you don't have a job, you don't have income coming in, but still there was a boom in people having children, and similar observations was also seen during the pandemic, and I'm sure there is research coming up to explore that phenomena then, that were people having more children during the pandemic.
Yes.
So that means a short-term unemployment may not be just seen as a stressful scenario. Long-term is definitely, for now, the literature says long-term unemployment is bad, and we're not arguing with that. But what about short-term? What about when you're unemployed for a couple of months?
Yeah. 6 months also.
You,
Yeah, 6 months is also.
yeah, a couple of months, 6 months,
Yeah.
3 months, 5 months. I mean, that's for my data, I could go as back as 6 months. So
Yes.
let's just move during that ballpark number. So I could look at those who are unemployed for a month versus those who are unemployed for 6 months.
Okay.
So during that time, is it completely a bad thing? Because I also found an increase in time spent on self leisure and self care.
Yes.
And you see, on today's life, a lot of people are quitting their jobs, are taking sabbaticals. Sometimes they do take it to start something new, sometimes take it to take a break. During the pandemic, we saw
Yeah.
people who had the luxury of working from home, they started traveling the whole world and working.
Yeah. So, the labor
Or
market, Sanjukta, has, undergone a lot of evolution. So, that blur between anyone who is employed or not unemployed is actually, becoming very hazy, because, this gig economy, if you have the skills, you could be making a lot of money also, right?
see, that's when
Even
you're
with
saying,
no formal job in your hand,
see,
right?
that's when you're saying formal, having a formal 9 to 5 job versus, selling your hobbies or selling your skills and
Yeah.
not on a more
Yeah.
non-formal setting. I'm not talking about that. I am even those, so my data looks at those who are self-employed, and
Okay.
self-employed doing whatever, being in the informal sector, being a consultant or selling their merchandise.
Yeah.
That's also considered a job, because it's self-employment is also employment. You don't really
Yes.
need to work for somebody to be
I would
called
argue that
employed.
that is the best form of employment, self-employment.
That could be lot. Again, that's debatable. I know there are a lot of people who prefer to work for somebody else, people who prefer to be their own bosses,
I mean,
but
that in
that's a different
itself,
argument.
yeah, that in
But
itself,
even
yeah, yeah, please.
those people who are self-employed, and those people who are employed for somebody else,
Yeah.
the need, uh, both kind of people are looking at those temporary unemployment phase as a good thing,
Okay.
as a blessings in disguise.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
My paper is just looking, I mean, if at that time I had the bandwidth, or I had the me was like, I mean, the thought process to go, not just focus on parental care, and also look at self care.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a good area to understand that in the short run, are
Yeah.
people focusing more on themselves? Are
Yes.
focus is that short term unemployment, when
Yeah.
people are focusing more on the children, is that having an impact on the kid?
Okay.
Is that improving test scores or improving the development of the child?
Okay.
These are
Okay.
experiments, these are studies which can give a lot of insights of what's happening there. How
Okay.
to tap into that short term unemployment. How,
Okay.
and maybe, as you said, the labor market has evolved so much in the
Yeah.
last few decades,
Yeah.
and
Last
it's
decade, I would say. Last 10 years.
evolving every second.
Yes.
Then this is one evolvement can look at,
Yes.
like giving
Yeah.
short term
Absolutely.
unemployment or short term breaks
Yeah.
to people, or that's why you see a lot of people changing jobs often, and taking those breaks when they don't have a job, because everybody is in a stressful environment. No matter you're working for yourself, you're working for somebody else,
Working for
you
yourself, I would make the case you are not in any way stressed because you're working for yourself. When you're working for someone else, there is more likely, for you to be, stressed. And the other thing is that, developed economies are actually more data driven. So your roles and responsibilities are very, you know, delineated in terms of what is your expectation. That is not so much the case in India, right? Where what you are expected to do, keeps on evolving and changing, right? So that also. But anyhow, Sanjukta, given all of this, right? If you were to, draw any parallels in terms of what your motivation for doing this paper was, and your, conclusion, what, yeah, so what sort of, implications or parallels, one can draw with Indian economy or the socio-economic context of India, right? Because yes,
yeah, okay, that's a very good question. um so let's just look at the two economies, the US versus Indian economy. US economy is very different. The household structure, but just focus. So there are two factors in my paper which look at the labor market and household structure. That's the two things that I'm connecting. So if
yeah,
I just look at the household structure in the US versus India, in
yeah,
US the maximum number of adults in a household at an average is two. You have two parents and you have kids,
okay,
and the two parents can be working, or one working parent, or the other person's looking at taking care of household needs. That can be true. In
mhm,
India, on the other hand, there are more, it's more common to have more than two adults in a house. You have grandparents, you have one, it's not unusual to have four adults and then children, and that could anywhere between 2 to 5, or however an
yeah,
individual family is
yes, yes,
choosing to have.
yes, yes,
So a lot of the so in this cases, a lot of the childcare needs
yeah,
are fulfilled by most of the attention factors, the time spent by an adult in a household is already divided among many adults in an Indian household. So
okay,
for parents in the US who are both working, they will use professional childcare.
okay,
They'll use daycare center.
yes,
They'll have in-house caretakers who will take care of their children in
yes,
when they are working,
yes,
right? So, and when they lose their jobs, then they can just stop sending their kids to the day, because they can, if definitely not get the babysitter in. If
yes,
they're paying the babysitter by the hour or the days, like, fine, just for the next week I don't need it, and I'll take care of the kid on my own.
yes,
Right, that can easily happen. If you
mhm,
look at India, that doesn't happen, because you already have, it's either a one working, a lot of households are only one working member and the
yes,
other one takes care of the house, or you have multiple adults, like you have grandparents
yeah,
living in
that
the
is,
same
yeah,
house.
exactly. Even if both
Yeah,
parents
or
working, you have the grandparents who can, take
you
care.
have grandparents working. I mean, you also have a house, like I grew up in a household where both my parents are working, and we had a in-house caretaker who's
Okay.
like maid and caretakers to take care of us, as my parents had a demanding jobs. So you have that as well, but you also have families, or actually that's in urban settings. We are moving towards families which are very nuclear with both parents working, but it's still at an average for a country this vast. You
Okay.
have more adults than kids, so you're not, when you lose your job, you're not substituting your daycare center or professional caretakers
Yes.
and saving money on that, because you really don't have it back. So
Yeah.
that's a big difference. Then the income, the labor market was also very different from India. From the US. In the US, you have all these benefits. You lose a job, you have a lot of social security benefits.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
have backups to come up. In
Yes.
India, because of the vast size of the country, we don't have a very developed social security network.
Yeah.
So even those who have been unemployed for a long time, they cannot get on social benefits.
Yeah. Yes.
It's there in certain pockets, very small underprivileged pockets of the country, but it's not a very wider program.
Yes.
So so I would say there would be an oversimplification to assume that the behavior that I have found in the US household can be translated to an Indian household.
Okay.
Yeah, it's even though the US income inequality is so much higher than Indian income inequality,
Yes.
looking at the Gini index
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
of as like the 2023 numbers.
Yeah.
Even then, the fundamentals are so different of the Indian economy. The household expectations
Yes.
differ so much. I mean, in a lot of these Indian households, you will, I mean, you can even call your parents, even if your parents don't live with you, it's not unusual to have grandparents stay for a longer period of time just to take care of their children.
Yes. Yes. Exactly.
Right. So I can't say that just because parents lost their jobs in India, unemployed parents will have their spending behavior, it's a time spending behavior the same as US parents. Because these parents may end up spending a lot more time on job search.
Okay.
Maybe which I did not find there. So what exactly happens there will need an entire field of research. And with if they're coming up with time diaries surveys,
Yeah.
time use surveys, then maybe that phenomena can be very well explained. Even I'm looking at mood indicators where US household parents have been said no to be happier and spend time with the kids. They're not said
Uh-huh.
to be sad if they're lost jobs. We may not see the same thing in India.
Yeah, that could be
Right.
because your
Could be for a number of reasons. I mean, it would again an oversimplification just to assume that these are my 5 reasons that will happen. Because it's a very complex country. This
yeah,
is
yeah,
a
yeah,
very complex country. The social structure, the economic structure is so different and so individualistic and region specific.
yeah,
Even
exactly.
to say that what works in Karnataka and saying that okay, I'll just use the same model in Delhi and expect it to work. That's also a very big assumption, and we see that happening and failing in the social sector programs on a
Yeah,
very regular
yes,
basis.
exactly.
So
Yes.
because and all of them, the reasons those fail, the reason even this idea may also fail, my studies conclusion may also or work in India is the same thing. The fundamentals of an Indian economy, Indian households are so different, and
Yeah.
the cultural settings is so different even from each other. What works in Karnataka may not work in Delhi.
Even at a macro level,
So
you have large section of population living barely above the poverty line. So for them,
yeah,
meeting their daily needs, is a struggle, right? So they are not bothered
right.
about, these questions as to how much time am I allocating, you know, for my child, right? Because so
They are right. They're not even aware of it. And Indian
yeah,
government has been spending time and energy to make people aware. That's what I'm saying. There's been these programs at in underprivileged communities where they are training kids. They're training the mothers, they're training the fathers.
okay, okay,
They're teaching them how to be involved, how
okay,
to talk to them.
okay, great.
Yeah, to be aware of what's like. They are even to tell those parents who are uneducated or living on the close to the poverty lines to say, no, you have to spend 2 hours with the children, talking to them and asking them about school. And they'll just turn around and say, like, what do you mean talk to them about school? What is happening in school?
Yeah. Okay,
They
Sanjay.
don't even know. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's on it's a different discussion. It's a different discussion, and encouraging some, like, yeah, for Indian researchers, economists,
Yeah.
educationists, spend time there to figure out what's happening there, to see
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can improve
Yeah.
the the Indian economy or Indian household structure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's the most apt, time for us to, wind up this conversation, where you are
Okay.
actually suggesting, areas of research that, people are doing their PhD, can actually, get into, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I have one, friend. She's actually collected primary data, time use survey data here in Punjab.
Okay.
And yeah, I think it took 6 months for her to actually, get the data for 4 or 5 cities. Okay. So it's
Wow.
like, it can be a very long and a tiring process, but I think the reward in terms of, if you can come up with, some sort of implications for households, that can have its own, rewards for you as a researcher,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Sanjit. I actually thoroughly enjoyed, the conversation with you.
I'm glad, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you, Sanjita.
Have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you.